Welcome back, everybody. It is Wins Above Fantasy, episode 173. For joining us on the podcast, happy Thursday. We've officially had 1 week of baseball. Those of you guys on the live stream, we're a couple days early, Tuesday night. So that's kind of a programming note. We'll be doing Wednesday night most of the season. Just had a little scheduling snag this week. But Steve, very excited to be here talking baseball. It's crazy to think it's been less than a week because we're talking overreactions and our reactions to those. And it seems like we had to cut the list of names from like 60 down to 30 down to 20. But we're talking about the guys that seem to be buzzing all of the text threads and at the top of the most added charts or busting the fab charts. So I'm excited to get into this. It's always an exciting time of the year, wrought with nerves on if you should be moving faster to grab these guys or if you should exercise some caution, because we've been here before, right? We've seen some of these guys that everybody sprints to go grab, and then the Cinderella turns into a pumpkin type of thing. So excited to get into it, man. Haven't even heard how your teams are going. We don't have time for all of that, but I can tell you my industry leagues look great. My home league, not so great. And that's okay. It's a long season, but how are you? And how's the season going?
Yeah, doing well. I was actually joking with a few players in the Pitcher List Discord, a few guys in Discord, and a few guys in my home league. Like, I've been waiting for one of these dart throws to like not do well, so I could have someone to drop in my first come first serve league. It's like, all right, like I can't move on from any of these guys. Like, I actually dropped Sean Burke preemptively to add Max
Wow.
Meyer today, and Burke starts tomorrow just because I didn't want to miss out
And
on
he's coming
Meyer.
off a
And
good
Meyer even
start.
has
Yeah.
the Braves next, but like it was. I don't want to. I'm not complaining about having guys that have been performing well, but it's just been interesting from that end. And yeah, so far my TGFEI team's been pretty good. I have Judge, so that's been going well.
There you
Um,
go. It's now the time when you want to talk about the torpedo bat and how Judge isn't the one using it, or how much time do we have here?
Yeah, I threw it in the rundown just because it's been such a hot topic, and I had some interesting thoughts, and I know we have a harder out today, more so than usual, but I,
How
I
would you
think it
summarize? How would you summarize?
I think it's been a massive overreaction to like, oh, this is illegal. Like
Sure.
players used it last year. Like it was Stanton used it in the playoffs. Like yes, Stanton was great in the playoffs, but this is not a new thing. And there's been manipulation of the bats within the rules forever.
For a long time.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, Rates and
There's like,
Barrels had a
yeah, the
bat
cup
scientist
that,
on.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
all that.
So I think it's great. I think it's awesome that we're actually seeing some actionable development that's for hitters for once. Like, because you hear all these things about pitch design and everyone adds all this velocity, and there's all of the data. Like, we've joked about this on the show before. It's like all of this data is great, but it's really just a tool for pitchers.
Right.
Even like the batter metrics, like the swing speed stuff, like we talked about that, how eventually it would like eventually be turned against the hitters and used for pitchers on how to attack them. And pitch design is at such an amazing level, and these guys are at such an high level, and the playing field is tilted so much towards the pitcher, and there's outrage over these bats, like, oh, it's illegal. Like, no, like that's all these people do is complain about
I love it,
the
man.
batting average and the lack of balls in play. It's like, okay, well, now here's this science and this
And how
tech
many
that's
of those
helping
people,
hitters.
right, how many of those people are griping about
Yeah.
missing the steroid era and wanting all this, the pop and everything? I think what's more interesting is just how it's going to game out with the adoption of it, because it seems like all the hitters are ordering one. Like I know tonight there's like a dozen extra names who are trying out the torpedo bat tonight. And you just like, you can Google this and it's a list. You're like, oh, it's going to be Lindor. It's going to be, there's probably 20. And I know Max Muncy was, quoted saying he's got one ordered. He's going to try it out and everything. But do we really think, I mean, crystal ball, do you think that by let's say July, half of the batters in the league will be using it.
I don't know because um in listening to Rates and Barrels today, had a bat scientist on, or not a bat scientist, but like a guy
Mhm.
is a bat expert and helps design bats. I'll pull up the name shortly here, but
It wasn't the guy from Miami though, right? The physicist from MIT.
is a third party bat company essentially.
Okay.
I'll pull up the info. It's Keenan Long of Long Ball Labs. And he's
Okay.
basically a guy who helps design, and he's like a bat fitter. Like if you go get your golf clubs fitted,
Yeah, I have.
he's the guy who fits you for a bat. And he was talking about, and the main takeaway that I took from it, there's so much amazing information on it. Go listen to it if you haven't already. It's
I need to. Yeah.
today's episode of Rates and Barrels with Saris. Um, and he talked about how it needs to be so how each hitter how it's different for each hitter. Like a torpedo bat might not be the answer for
A
someone
slap
like
hitter.
Soto or
Okay.
that has this amazing power and bat speed and is able to like adjust his barrel easily like but it is for someone who like Volpe who would get jammed inside and doesn't have the raw power to
Okay.
manipulate the barrel. And those are just two anecdotes and larger examples, but my takeaway is that yes, the science is great, and we now have the data to observe where these things are going to benefit the players, but it's on a very individual basis. So
Interesting.
I,
Okay.
I think you're going to see more shapes and different things and different types of bats for different situations. And yeah, and like it's all within the rule. Like MLB, like yes, this stuff is all cleared with MLB, and these specs are sent to MLB and they're approved. So it's not like there's any funny business going around. So I
I
think it's
love
just
it,
really
man.
cool. And
It's fun.
yeah,
Every year seems like there's something
yeah,
that's, whether it's a humidor or whatever it is, where, my friend who actively bashes me for even liking baseball, and he's still a friend, texted me and asked about these bats. So it's like when it transcends even the audience of the sport, it's one of those stories. So we'll have to follow it this year. But speaking of good bats, that's how we have categorized our first list of names here, Steve, of which we have to jump in. It is the good bats to start the season. And there's a laundry list, but unfortunately, like I said, I don't have loads of shares of a lot of these guys, but these are the ones that are somewhat available, probably in more of your non-industry leagues. These guys range anywhere from like 10% to 70% rostership on like a Yahoo. But I think we just got to hop into the names, Steve. So the one that kind of stands out the most in terms of just, some league rankings is Wilyer Abreu, who I think, last year he was a name and he got some run, and we saw flashes of that power speed potential that Wilyer Abreu has shown in the minors for several seasons, but it was kind of wrought with this volatile K rate, which led to average concerns. And so far, so good, where he has no strikeouts to date on the season as we record this. Super early, of course, 7 for 11 with 5 walks and hit the 2 homers on opening day. And at first, I was quick to brush this one off, to be honest, Steve, because I just figured the book's out on Abreu a little bit. Like we know the type, and he could be valuable. He could be a streamer. He's certainly rosterable in like a industry league, but I didn't think there was anything really sustainable. What was interesting to me is the exit velocity readings, where a tweet from Chris Clegg, who is a great follow on X or Twitter, had thrown out that last year Abreu had 12 batted balls that had over 108 mph exit velocity. He has 3 already, and the 3 were on opening day. So I don't know if he was just completely wired with the adrenaline, or if we're actually seeing him take a big step forward in terms of like the raw power. And yeah, the strikeouts are the thing that have always been in question for him, and he has yet to have a strikeout so far this season as we record. So Abreu was super interesting out of the gate. Wanted to hear your take. This is 66% rostered, so not as available, but probably some shallow leagues. Want to hear your thoughts on Abreu.
we do this show around this time every year, maybe the next week, but we talk about things that we should care about early in the season. And a rule of thumb is stats that have a large denominator. And by a large denominator, I mean like what the percentage is based off of. So, like, to talk simple math, like on the fraction, the one on the bottom, where barrel percentage is the number of barrels divided by your number of balls in play. There's also barrel whole plate appearance, but the denominator for that is plate appearance. Things like that, like barrel percentage, hard hit, where the denominator is balls in play, are noisy in a small sample, and we're essentially talking about one series. However, things like plate skills, where the denominator is pitches, as a rule of thumb, that stuff stabilizes quicker. It's still not as um, as stable as it will be. Like we talk about stabilization point, where what I mean by that is when you could believe the actual output and the results more than what you need to weight it back to an average or to just league average in certain cases. So things that I'm interested in right now are mainly around plate skills, and it's why pitchers are easy to identify as in the season, because you have such a larger sample, because they throw 100 pitchers in the start, and you can get a lot from that alone. So what I care about for hitters is anything where the denominator is pitches. So their chase
Chase.
rate,
Yeah.
their swing rate, their contact percentage, their swing strike. And that stuff for Weiler Abreu looks pretty good. Yeah, the 0% strikeout rate and 31% walk rate, those I don't really believe, especially when he struck out 27 and 28% of the time in the past. However, I may project for a lower strikeout rate going forward, because his swing strike rate is cut in half from 12.5% last year to 7.6% this year, because his contact percentage is up 10 percentage points, because his zone swing percentage is up 10 percentage points, because his O swing, so his chase, is down 10 percentage points. That's the stuff that tells me there's something going on here that's good. I honestly don't really care about the 636 average and the 7 for 11. Like, that's obviously not going to happen, but I think that there may be some room for improvement here with the plate skills. And if you can get that 28%, 29% strikeout rate down to 25%, that's going to help a player like Abreu that has, a bit of a kitchen sink fantasy value approach, that he's a 15 homer hitter, that, maybe in 160 games could approach 20 with a slightly better batting average than 250. So that's the stuff that I'm excited about, and why I think Abreu is an interesting player. He kind of got slept on. I don't think he played much in spring training and wasn't great. And yeah, I know he was a rookie of the year candidate last year, but kind of was meh from just a fantasy perspective, and kind of written off. Like, his ADP was pretty low. But he's looking like a good play, and that Red Sox lineup, I know we'll get to him later. Devers isn't looking great, but there's a lot to like, and I think that Weiler Abreu is someone that I'm interested in.
Yeah, just worth noting that I think the 15 homers, like I think if we're seeing Abreu break out, there's plenty of room for the pop to be more like 20 plus in AAA in 2023, which I know is a couple seasons ago, but 86 games, he had 22 homers. I don't think he's like just suddenly a 35 homer guy, but I do think, something like a 20 and 10 type of season doesn't seem out of the possibility. So that's Abreu. Shifting to one that I think was even more interesting a couple seasons ago is Kyle Manzardo, which, we talked with a handful of pitcherless people, Trevor Huth, Shelley was big on Manzardo as well. And some of our like prospect drafts when he was with the Rays. And he had a hit tool that was probably the most exciting thing, just, a high average guy. And then he leaves the Rays, and it's kind of like, he struggled when he had his cup of coffee and everything. And now he's, been one of the main names that everyone's talking about. And the plate discipline, like you talked about, Steve, is a huge part of his game as well. So Manzardo is one that has always been double digits walk rate, and his walk rate is about the same number as his strikeout rate, like all through the minors. One of those, like a Newt Bar, or insert your favorite plate discipline guy. But Manzardo's got 2 homers already, which, just starts to beg the question, like, is this a post type sleeper for the Guardians, where first base, when it got shallow, you were looking for any help, and he's got eligibility there. He's batting 3rd in that lineup. And it just calls into question, what do we think about Manzardo, a guy who's looked the part so far and had a phenomenal spring with 4 home runs and a 321 average in spring too. So Steve, with everything you said, which is great about what to look for early in the season, do you see reasons for excitement about Manzardo at a 43% roster rate, or do you think this is kind of lightning in a jar type of thing?
I think Manzardo is a must add. He might be the biggest must add that we're going to talk about tonight. Another thing that you could take from the first week of the season, besides plate skills, I think is playing time and how a player is utilized in a lineup. The fact that Manzardo started every game, he started versus 4 lefties, and has 2 homers versus those lefties, tells me everything I need to know. And that's that Kyle Manzardo is going to be an everyday player for the Guardians. I think that the Guardians are a sneaky, smart organization.
Mm-hmm.
People were kind of miffed and baffled with the Josh Naylor trade. I think they knew what they had here in Manzardo and wouldn't have made that trade if they didn't think that that Manzardo can be a really good everyday first baseman, DH type. And I think that's exactly what Manzardo is going to be. I think all the offseason we're like, oh, the Guardians were cheap. They traded Naylor a year before free agency and signed Carlos Santana. Like, that's such a downgrade. I think that Manzardo may be, it'll be, I'm not saying that he's going to be better than Josh Naylor. I know Josh Naylor had a great season last year, but
Sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer than people think.
And it
Because
might
Manzardo,
look more like Naylor from a couple of years back too, because
sure,
Naylor
which
kind of sold
was
out for pop a little bit
Mhm.
last year, but 2 years ago, where he was a 17 homer 308 guy, that seems a little bit more like Manzardo's profile.
I don't know. I think Manzardo may have a bit more pop than that. You think he's,
Uh,
he popped 20 homers in the minors last year and 5 more in the majors. So, it was 25 across 30-ish games, 136 games. So,
yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize he had the 20 homers in just 83 games in
yeah.
the minors. I think I'm just going off of when we were looking at him in terms of, like, his hit grades, and like I remember the hit tool was always a lot higher than the power, but that
22
can
homers in
come through.
93 games. His first full season in the minors between single A and double A when he was with the Rays. So
Okay.
I think he may have a bit more pop than than expected. And yeah, another guy that I'm a sucker for with a low strikeout rate. A guy that could clearly barrel up the ball. He had 9.5% barrel rate in a 53 game sample last year, which is not nothing. And better than I think the 5 homers that he hit, right, and a bit more
Hmm.
telling. So, uh,
Interesting.
out of all the guys that we talk about that are more lower rostered, I think Manzardo is the guy that I would be the most excited about.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to convince me. I always start with that plate discipline, and he definitely stands out as top 1 or 2 from the list of names we're getting to, which is probably a segue to a guy who is kind of in the same breath as Abreu and Manzardo to start the season. Tyler Soderstrom, who does not have catcher eligibility, but has a catcher background. So if he gets some reps there in some of those formats where you don't need 20 appearances, that's going to be real sneaky for Soderstrom. He is one that has the same level of kind of prospect hype as Manzardo. He was a former first rounder. And Soderstrom, I know he's gotten some reps, Steve, but just looking at it, it seems like it's always like, I don't know if there was an injury or what, but it's always been uh, kind of some games in the majors, some games in the minors, and it's never really clicked. Like the average in 2023 was at 160 over 45 games. 233 average last year in 60 games. And now he's coming in hot, a 368 average. He's got 3 homers. And I think people are just excited about the ballpark. And again, the fact that it was a prospect that had a lot of buzz to him in terms of like the pop. He doesn't have the plate skills that Manzardo does. All throughout, every stop, he's been kind of a mid high 20s. His projections have him at like a 26% K rate. So not quite as salivating, certainly not for a points league. But talk to me about Soderstrom, 55% rostered. Are you as excited about him as some of the other names we've talked about?
Definitely interested. Not as excited about as Manzardo. I do have a few leagues on like Fantrax. I think maybe he's eligible as a catcher in some Yahoo leagues where it's like, if they use like a default position when he was a catcher, maybe not. But
At least in my Yahoo, he's first
he's not
only right now.
okay.
But
And he hasn't played a catcher yet. And I know
nope.
Langoliers will get a lot of the starts there. But that's almost my confirm. I think he's Shea Langoliers at first base, which is interesting and nice. And I think, there's a 30+ homer bat here, but I just do not expect anything above like a 230 to 240 max batting average. Like 240 would be a really, really good outcome for him. Like, the contact, the Z swing and the O swings are he doesn't really swing in the zone. He chases a good amount and has again, a 13.7% swing strike rate. So a lot of swing and miss in this game. But in deeper leagues where I think he's a great util play, I think people were all over that in draft season. I think he was a popular late round corner infield guy. And who knows, maybe there is an injury or he does rack up some catcher spots here and get those 5 starts that you would need at Yahoo or something like that. And then it becomes really, really interesting. Like Soderstrom at catcher is as interesting to me as Langoliers is. I think they're very similar players, and I like Langoliers a lot. Last year, I like him. This year, I think he was a great pick, like 100 to 140 ish, the range that he was going on. I think I think it's not just because they're on the same team. I think it's a good comp.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's fair. And like you said, the average is always going to hold them down, but there should be good pop there. Again, another segue here to first baseman as well, who we probably had pegged for low average and high pop. Catch your breath on the roller coaster of Spencer Torkelson. It's crazy to think that, in last year's drafts, he was going super early, like maybe like 5th round or something. He had the 31 home run season in 2023. We don't even have to talk about how big of a prospect Torkelson was. And then last year, as we all know, it kind of all fell apart. He was getting sent down, hit 219. The plate discipline's been kind of a bugaboo for him throughout. But talking about the plate discipline skills, Steve, this is one where early on in Torkelson's only played 4 games. He only has 1 home run, but he had a really good spring as well, where I think it was it 4 or 5 homers he popped in spring, 5 homers in spring and hit 340. So it's as much about that as it is carrying it over. And the fact that he had he has 5 walks so far to go with the 5 strikeouts, but the contact rate that's always lived in like the mid 70s is at a 96% so far this season. The swing percent is down. So it definitely seems like he's being more selective. And this is a guy that I think his rookie year, Steamer had him for 33 homers and like a 270 average or something. So if we're not that far removed from Torkelson in terms of the talent, he's still just 25 years old. This one seems like a pretty high ceiling, Steve. It's just a very small sample size, and we just got burned last year. So where are you at on Torkelson?
We did, but there's a lot of interesting things going on with those stats that we care about this early into the season. And honestly, like, yes, these stats are important, not to poo-poo everything that we just talked about, but you almost want like 2 weeks worth of data, maybe a little bit more, maybe 10 games. But Um,
Is he a
you know,
rush to add though? Because 35%.
I think so. I think him and Manzardo, he's up there with Manzardo.
Yeah,
A 92% contact percentage, a 3% swinging strike rate. Um, the O swing is down 3 percentage points. The Z swing is down too. So in the zone, like he's swinging less overall. But hey, I'll take that when you're making, 15 to 16% more contact. Now that's also an unsustainable. Like that's a Stephen
sure.
Kwan
Right,
type
right.
contact percentage, which is not gonna stick. Um, but I mean, they did face the Dodgers and had some good pitchers, and he was making contact versus them. So, um, yeah, I mean, we were super excited about him just 2 years ago with that second half, right? Like he
Mhm.
had the 20-ish homers from July on, right, in 2023 that led to that hype last year, and then it almost seemed like, is Torkelson going to make the team this offseason? That was sort of the talk, and then he quieted that with an amazing spring, and then it's continued. So yeah, and we've talked about this before, but I think that the Tigers lineup is sneaky good. I've you don't need to know my feelings, but everyone knows my feelings about Riley Green,
Yep.
Kerry Carpenter. Um,
Yeah, shame on Glaber out for a
yeah,
while,
yeah,
but
he looked
yeah.
good too and has an oblique, so when he comes back, that could be good. Colt Keith's looked pretty good.
I agree. Even
Um,
that one dude, Dylan Dingler or whatever his
yeah,
name is,
yeah,
like, he's been
some
swinging
nice
the bat
pop.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
with you, man. I think Manzardo. I think both Manzardo and Torkelson are rush to add mode
mhm,
because big time ceiling. And it would probably look a little bit different for either one of them if it's like 90th percentile outcome, but both are huge assets in any league format. To keep it moving, Steve, I don't even think I told you a spontaneous Saturday trip for me, Alyssa, and Victoria, the baby's first ever MLB game.
oh,
We went
nice.
down to Busch Stadium, and I got to see Mr. Lars Nootbaar go off at the time for the undefeated Cardinals. I know, take a picture while that lasts, but Nootbaar, 44% rostered. And man, I know we talked about it, Steve. I did thankfully end up with a couple shares in my industry leagues. I missed out on them on the home league, but I'm in on this one, man. It's like, yes, I'm biased, but I think talk about plate discipline. He is always one that we love the on base skills. Um, and I think what I'm most excited about for Newt Bar, who by the way is 4 games in, he's hitting 462. He's got a couple homers. What I'm most excited about is the narrative that he had talked about last year, where he was working with Arenado on more line drives, more pulls, and then he had that injury, and he talked about how it just kind of he relapsed into his approach that he'd always done because it was more comfortable. And I know everything you said on batted ball data, the pull rate is up,
Yeah,
the line drive rate is up. So super small sample sizes, but this is a guy we've been waiting on for 3 years, and it just kind of feels a little bit different. I know I'm definitely got the rose tinted glasses, but the Cardinals were a dumpster fire last year. And it seems like, if not the team that's off to a nice little 3-1 start, definitely Newt Bar feels like new lease on life mode for being just 27 years old, and we've been waiting and waiting for this. So I think 44% feels under rostered, but where are you at with Newt Bar, especially in comparison with all the names we've talked about?
I totally agree. I have a few shares I added in my home league. It's exciting because it seemed like we've been waiting for this to happen. And sometimes you kind of just write these guys off just because it gets so stale, right? Like, yes, all the process stats are always good. Oh, it's just one tweak away. He's got to pull the ball and lift the ball a little bit more. Well, it looks like it now finally may be happening. It was happening at certain points of other years, and then injuries happen. You just riffed on how it prevented him from implementing those changes that he wanted to correct. And he's like such a cerebral guy. Like he knows this, which is why we were so in on it and bought in on him in a year after year after year. And I think that it may be paying off. Like the early returns look really, really good. You don't have to question any of the plate discipline stuff. Like that's always going to be great. Um, and maybe this is the year that it finally does come together. He's already hit a ball 113, a 67% hard hit percentage. I know we need to take that number with a grain of salt, but the actual batted ball directions and pull metrics and ground ball metrics have me super super excited. It's the best ground ball rate of his career by like almost 17 percentage points. Like that's not going to stick. It's going to come much closer to what he was. But
Yeah,
um,
it is. But I think that,
it's
the longer
encouraging. It's
and
encouraging.
the longer you wait, the more that 44% gets up to 70%. And I do think he has a different kind of ceiling because he's not going to be a 25 steal guy or a 35 homer guy. But I do think that the projections and his track record underrate his hit tool, like with his approach, with his batted ball, like when it's looked good for him. There was that 2 or 3 month stretch. I think we just did this exercise on the episode a couple shows back. There was that 2 month stretch where he was hitting like 300 and going nuts. So I think if it all clicks for Nootbaar, you know, there's a high ceiling on average. I think he could be like a 285 guy, 2010, maybe 25 if the power stays. It's tough with that ballpark, but yeah, excited about Newt. And yeah, I think we'll see where it goes from here. But very, very cool as a Cardinals fan, and just in fantasy, like you said, it can feel stale. But for those who have kind of held out hope, we might have good things for Newt. No easy segue going from all those names to Isaiah Kiner Falefa, Steve. He is no spring hen, I think age 30, and yet he is running wild with 4 steals in 5 games. And Kiner Falefa, believe it or not, shows up on my most rostered chart for TGFBI because
Wow.
he was my JP Crawford this year, where like you
Okay.
remember the year I did really well in
Yeah.
Raz Slam, and I was like, okay, rather than going for the prospects who might get called up, you got to go with playing time. And on those best ball leagues, he's got so much eligibility. I think it's like third, second, and short or something. So I just kind of loaded up on him. So what a pleasant surprise. I did not expect him to, a 60th percentile speed guy to have 4 steals in 5 games, but it's been talked about in like interviews that he was trying to run more. So super exciting for Kiner Falefa. The fact that he's batting 333, I don't think any of that will stick, but he's always been like a plus average guy. And yeah, it's just pretty interesting. Like, the Pirates aren't like, their pitching has been more exciting than their bats, but O'Neill Cruz is another torpedo bat guy, and Kiner Falefa is kind of in that mini leadoff at the 9 slot. So 2-3 batters after him is Brian Reynolds and O'Neill Cruz. Could be sneaky runs here for Kiner Falefa. Yeah, just a kind of an interesting name, much different than any of the other ones we talked about. And yeah, the rostership kind of reflects it at just 17%. But what do you think about IKF?
4 steals already this year and just 11 last year, 14 the year before that. So it's not like we had this sample with, the new rules and larger bases and pitch clock that he was going to run wild. He did, when he was a valuable fantasy player, like when he had that catcher eligibility, was an 8 homer, 20 steal, 271 season. I think that maybe he could have like a 5 to 7 homer, 25 steal, 250 season, and that would be good.
Yeah.
He's gonna play because the Pirates offense and lineup is just not good. They need to manufacture runs. They've been running like crazy. I know a lot of that is them picking on the Marlins from that opening weekend.
Yeah, that's true.
And they do have a lot of pitchers to take advantage of with steals, but I would be comfortable projecting at least 16 more steals the rest of the way. That gets you to 20, and that's going to play in like a 15 teamer like that, and best ball, especially just considering that he's going to play basically every day. You hope he doesn't get like traded, but hey, ride it till then. Because if he is, having a higher end on the batting average and steals, like he can go to a contender where he doesn't play every day. But that's July's business, right? Who cares about that right now?
Right.
But that IKF cook on the Pirates and steal and you know get some runs and some good playing time there. So I think that's a great call, and I think he was overlooked by me, but I think that's a great oatmeal-y, boring position eligibility guy that's gonna contribute at least in steals and like not be too bad in the other categories.
Yeah, kind of an aging Elvis Andrews type of thing. But yeah, just that stuff matters in the deepest of leagues. So yeah, there's IKF. Last one we've got before break, Gavin Sheets, Steve, where we've known for a while that Gavin Sheets is kind of a source of power now at age 28. And I think for a while it was just like stuck on the White Sox. He'd be like a platoon guy. He'd come in and showcase the ability for pop, but it was never regular playing time. And here he is with 5 games in for the Padres. The results look good so far. He's got a homer, he's got a steal, and he's hitting the ball. So I think it's 7 for 14 for Gavin Sheets. And I mean, this one is very available, just 11% roster. I think when you look at like this year to last year, the bat speed looks like it's gone up quite a bit, which is
Mm-hmm.
which is encouraging. And then the plate discipline, it looks like, I mean, so far, at least on the surface level metrics, he's not striking out nearly as much. So Gavin Sheets is one that, again, if you're just looking for kind of an able power bat that's not going to completely kill you in average, he's an interesting option. But what did you think about Sheets, throwing him on the rundown here?
I snagged him in a few deeper leagues that were held later in draft season just because he was raking in spring training. Was announced that he was going to make the Padres. And the Padres have done well with this type. I'm not saying he's going to have the year that Profar had last year, but they've done well, like rehabilitating some of these guys that the league has quit on. I
Like a
still think,
Hosmer or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I still think this is at best a strong side of the platoon guy, but hey, maybe it could be like last year's Ryan O'Hearn, with maybe a little bit more power than like the average there. That he could get you closer to the 20-ish homers in partial playing time. So I think the fact that he got out of Chicago is important. I think that's good for like just the vibes and feeling good about yourself. San
Yeah.
Diego's off to a great start. They had a good vibes last year too. Like they seem like a good vibes team. And I'm not saying that this is the cause, but like ever since that disappointing year with Soto there, they've overperformed a bit and just seem like a good team to be a part of. And I think that there
Hmm.
could be some sort of soft analysis from that. And yeah, I think that this isn't like by a rush to add or like a deeper, a shallower league daily move play that you want to roster him forever, but roster him when he has a bunch of righties on the lineup. In
Yeah.
15 team leagues, I think it's a good bench play and play him in the weeks when he has a bunch of righties. Um, so I like Sheets. He's been on my radar since that hot springs training, and glad to see it continue into a hot start at least here for the few games that the Padres have played.
I like it. So there's Abreu, Manzardo, Soderstrom, Torkelson, Nootbaar, IKF, and Gavin Sheets. We're going to get to some more names here, but we're going to take our first ad break. We'll be right back after this. So, Steve, I know we kind of got a hard out tonight. We got a lot of names, but for the struggling bats, we won't dwell on this because it's early in the season. We want to stay positive, but Raffy Devers, historically bad start. Wilson Contreras in his own right, 0 for 18, 8 strikeouts. That might be related to me rostering him in the home league. The Braves are off to a slow start. Dylan Cruz off to a very, Cruz spelled with a K is the joke that TJ shout out Tom Joseph on Dylan Cruz, 10 strikeouts and 15 at bats. And then Tristan Casas, 1 for 17 with 7 Ks. Again, some of these numbers are going to be a little off from where we're recording. But across all these guys, what's your philosophy on these really slow starters? Do any of these give you, above a 5 out of 10 concern level?
Um, it's hard to overreact, but there is a few things that I'm worried about, and it's this may come back and look like silly a
You
silly
fell for it. Yeah, you lost
but
hope.
and I'm not concerned about even the insane strikeout numbers and the record strikeouts for Devers, but the reason why I don't have any shares is because of the shoulders, that were, bothering him last year, held him out of spring training. They talked about being concerned this year, um, and it's worrisome because of the fact that there's something that that like you wanted to hear, oh yeah, that was last season. I'm over it. Like I got this done. I would have almost preferred if there was a procedure. The fact that it's both shoulders for Devers, right? It's hard for me to just write this off as early season struggles as I normally would for a guy with his track record
Mhm. Or
because
the
of the fact.
disgruntled DH or any of that.
Yeah, that everything just seems to be like he didn't want a DH, then he said he would. Like it just like everything as far as the surrounding circumstances couldn't be worse for him. Um, and right or wrong, that was the shoulders were a reason why I was out. I don't have any shares of Devers. He's usually a guy that I have a lot of that I like every year. Just not this one, just because of the shoulders and I don't know if that's still bothering him. Maybe, you got to remember he had 2 or 3 spring training games, and like this is essentially still spring training for him. So he could start feeling better, um, and then turn it on, and the shoulders are behind him. And he still had a great year last year. I know he tapered off at the end when the shoulders really started to bother him, but he still put up close to 30 homers and was a great, great player even while dealing with some of this. So
Mhm.
who knows? It could be something that he gets over relatively quickly. It could be something that, all of a sudden in a week or two, if his struggle still continues, it's like, oh yeah, we got IL. He's got to get his shoulders right. Like that's also on the table too. So that's where
Yes.
that's where my concern is.
Would
That's
you
where I'm
sell
at.
would you sell low?
That's so hard to say right now. I don't think you can. I don't think you can right now.
You're
Like
kinda hitched to
you,
it. Yeah, if you
yeah,
drafted
you
him.
kind of gotta just
You're
hope
not
that.
gonna get yeah, you're not gonna get
Yeah,
anything of
exactly.
value, so, yeah.
Exactly.
Alright, well,
You
we
got
got a
you
lot
gotta
of
take the bet that Devers is the guy that he gets over it and that you'll reap the benefits for it. Yeah.
yeah, there's gonna be no value of trying to
Mhm.
move him unless you can get, 70 cents on the dollar or something. I would be interested in that just for all the reasons you pointed out. Yeah, we'll keep it moving. Let's get to the arms, Steve, because it's one of
Sure.
the most enjoyable parts of early on in the season. And yeah, I think we got to start with Mackenzie Gore, who is not necessarily an ad, but in leagues with trades, I think people are probably asking that same question of like, oh, do I sell high or do I think this is going to come down? We saw Gore with 13 Ks, no walks against the Phillies. And yeah, a lot of the stuff of because it's not a new thing, right? He's been a game log guy where in the past he's looked locked in for a start or two in a row and hit double digit strikeouts. But this looks a little bit different. So, Steve, give me your rundown on Mackenzie Gore. He stole the show on opening day. And I was personally quick to say, oh, yeah, that's Gore. It's going to happen. It's going to go away. But the more you kind of look at it, the more you think, oh, this could be happening. And he was a high end prospect. And, we looked at him the way that we once looked at like a Giolito and then they struggle or they're not quite an ace. Is Gore just kind of emerging into being an ace? What do we think here?
Part of the reason why this show or this topic works so well with arms because we have so much data and there's so many things that you could take from just one or two starts and one start in this case. But um, a lot of this information comes from, I'll plug it here, Lance Brasowski, friend of the podcast, Substack. If you do not subscribe to that, subscribe to that. It's essentially a breakdown of every pitcher and their like mechanical changes. So combine that article with or picks mix changes or like actual pitch data, pitch level changes. Um, so that combined with Nick's analysis, I think is essential daily reads.
Mm-hmm.
And Lance's gets more into like the minutia of what's actually happening as far as like arm slots and things like that. So you could see that Mackenzie Gore has a new slider. There's more glove side movement. He threw it 51% of the time to lefties. After in the second half last year, he only threw it 6% of the time. There's less fastball usage. We love this sort of stuff when this stuff happens, right? Like a guy that, Mackenzie Gore has a good velocity, good from the left side, but over relied on that fastball a little bit. And now starts throwing a slider that's going to get more swing and misses that he's more comfortable with, has a new shape, new velocity. This is the kind of stuff that leads to breakouts. I know Mackenzie Gore has teased this before, but I'm in and absolutely interested in Mackenzie Gore.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like you said, if there's notable changes that have happened, because we've always loved the fastball, or the less fastball usage is interesting, and a new slider always gets our attention. So yeah, part of me is still a little bit of skeptical, at least I think it's just been so long since I've seen the Nationals, actually develop an ace, and maybe that's unfair. I might be forgetting somebody,
I
but
mean, Strasburg was probably the last one, and then like they signed Corbin and Scherzer. Like those weren't developments,
yeah,
right? And they've
yeah,
had some failed ones in Josiah Gray, and even Mackenzie Gore at certain times has looked rough. So
yeah.
yeah,
Who's I'm curious what Gore's next start has to be like. Is it it might be between now and when the podcast comes out as well.
let me look
Let's
that up.
see. So Gore is, yeah, I don't have it here. Great
He's
radio.
tomorrow, yeah,
Oh, against the
at
Blue Jays.
Toronto, and
Okay.
then Tuesday versus the Dodgers. So
Okay.
interesting stuff. We're gonna find out a lot
We'll
about
find
Mackenzie
out. Yeah.
Gore. Yeah.
I will be on the record saying I definitely like Gore. I don't know that, which is fair. I mean, it's not like he's going to go out every time and have 13 strikeouts, but I think he's solid. I would love to see
He
the changes from this first
he
one
shows
stick.
these he shows these he's showed these flashes before too, right? So it's hard to
Right.
like get sucked
Anoint
in.
him
There's
as an
yeah.
ace. Yeah. Yeah.
He's been what he's a hipster, right? What Nick calls a hipster, like the
Yeah.
headache inducing um pitcher
Pitcher
that
that stifles the entire
yeah,
roster.
the
Yep.
entire
Yep.
roster. Yeah, like he's
You don't
gonna
want to
come out
drop.
and yeah, he'll have a 13 strikeout, 0 walk game, and then 1 and 2/3 innings with 7 earned runs, and it'll be so frustrating, right? But maybe these changes limit that sort of downside that makes them go from those hipsters and Tobies and guys that are more back end starters to fantasy 3-2-1s that don't have those
Yep.
painful outings. Maybe now he's all putting it together, right? This
Yeah.
is just his third full major league season. He's only had 2 full major league seasons. He's young.
Yeah.
He's young.
So trade target there for Gore if you believe in it. Of course, if you listen on the podcast, check out what he did yesterday against the Blue Jays. So moving on, Steve, to Jeffrey Springs, another one I've been in on. Just kind of a pitcher's pitcher, does not have the elite velocity, but if you look at, honestly, since 2022, he has been phenomenal when he's been on the mound. It's just, there was the TJ, he came back last year, was still good, but just not excellent. And he's excellent in a much different way. It's almost a prime Kyle Hendricks, where he's very much a command artist, change up first. That change up is one of the best ones in the majors. And it was cooking on that first start. I think I had like a 60% whiff rate. Overall, Springs, 6 innings, 9 Ks, 17 whiffs. If you look at the changeup, he gets so much rise on it, which is way more than most changeups in the league get. And it's placed right next to his fastball. So there's just really good tunneling and deception with it. But with an 89-mile-per-hour fastball, you have to wonder, what's that different about him versus, I don't know, like a Nick Martinez, who we like his changeup or something like that. That said, it's been a long time since we've seen Springs look bad on the mound. It's been like 4 years since. So you kind of wonder, is he one of these guys that just from knowing hitters, knowing his pitch sequencing, knowing his tunneling, like, is he at 57%? a guy that we can count on as more like an SP 3-4 versus like a streamer type with the Athletics. I know we were worried about the Rays moving on from him, but so far so good. And it's a guy that, again, I've been bought in on. Is just like the results always look great, and he's tough as nails. Talk to me about Springs.
You're the Springs guy, man.
I've had him when he's
Yeah.
dominated, dude.
And I get it. Like even last year, like we were like, oh my gosh, he's not hitting 90 after he came back from injury, but like he was still good in like the September
What?
starts, right? So maybe there's something to easily pass to brush over because the velocity is so low, and maybe we don't have the exact advanced metrics to quantify tunneling. We're getting closer and better at it, but that may be something that Springs, like a deception plus that Saris always talks about, right? Maybe there's elite deception there with Springs. So yeah, I find it hard to like I want to brush over it, but I don't. I'm not going to, because you're right. The results have just spoke for itself, and it's just like picked it up. Six innings, 9 Ks, no runs, 17 whiffs, business as usual, throwing 90, and it doesn't really matter. So yeah, I think that he's a guy that I have. Unfortunately, I don't think I have any shares of, but I kind of regret that I don't, and would definitely be looking to roster him if he was available in some of those 43% of the leagues that he's available in Yahoo.
Yeah, well, he's one of those that has, of the 5 or 6 more common pitches, he has one of the very best in that changeup. It's just a question of if you're leaning on that so regularly, eventually do people catch on, or is it truly just something that constantly keeps hitters off balance, and it's enough to pair with the fastball? But that Springs, keeping it moving. Jesus Luzardo, Steve, on the flip side, is one I do not have shares of because I liked so many of the names around it. I know that the velocity readings in spring had people excited, and he's one like Torkelson that like in 2024 drafts, he was going at, ADP 75 to 90, somewhere in there. And now he went all the way past pick 200. And so far, so good on start one with Luzardo. What have you kind of seen, and how do you size up the early outing we've seen from him?
Yeah, I didn't hype him up or wasn't one of my guys, but he was in that like I was interested in him because of those. Like I was interested in him and those guys, the little piranha theory, right? Like how do you know that you made a good decision when you just have to pick when you have to make a choice of the guys that you like or the guys that fall?
Sure.
And Luzardo fell to me in my home league. He fell to me in a few others, and it just looks like he's healthy. The Phillies are also, I think, an underrated place for pitchers to go. I know their ballpark isn't great, but they've gotten a lot out of those guys and have had different levels of success with homegrown guys, with guys that they've traded for.
Yeah,
And
Eflin or
yeah,
Christopher
yeah,
Sanchez. Yeah.
exactly. Nola has been great. I know he was a hype prospect, but um, it just looks like he's healthy. Like it looks like he's healthy, and when Luzardo's healthy, he's like that Shane McClanahan mold. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as that, but there's been stretches where he's been really, really good, and that's when he's healthy. It's a question if he'll stay healthy again all this year, but right now he is. That's what spring training and the velocity readings would tell us. He's got a new sweeper that's at like 87 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That's like 5 miles an hour harder than the average sweeper. So that's super exciting. Like he's already had the good slider in the past. Now he has this pitch that is harder and bendier than normal sliders, right? So the sweepers are usually low 80s, 83-ish miles an hour. So to have that much arm side, that much movement, and sweep and velocity, the fastball's up to 97. It's the hardest he's thrown since August of 2023. The change in bullet slider, also velocity up. Again, all of this is just based on Lance's write-ups, but he just looks healthy. So for that, I'm in. Like I'm glad. Like, yeah, he wasn't a target of mine, but I'm glad I have that one share. I'm glad it's like, yeah, Luzardo's. A few of the guys went that I talked about, like went. I'll take Luzardo here because he's available, and it looks like it's good so far.
Yeah, that sweeper, stay tuned, because that had absurd whiffs on the first one, and
Yeah,
that's the type of
and
a change that can unlock some serious stuff. And yeah, 2 years removed from
Lance
200 Ks.
Lance mentioned in his write up, like it might be like shock like shock theory, like this is the first time these guys are seeing it. They don't know what to do, and then they'll adjust. But it looked good, at least from the metrics and the inputs and the pitch data on it. So
Yeah.
it's exciting.
Nice. Age 27 Luzardo, and he is just 59% rostered. So that is definitely one. I think Luzardo and Springs, you'd probably go Luzardo, right, Steve? Because it's a breakout mold that we're more familiar with that happens a lot more often.
Sorry, I lost you there for a sec. What
Luzardo or Springs. I think we would lean Luzardo just
yeah,
because of the breakout prototype, if you will, or the archetype of that pitcher.
yeah, I would go Luzardo.
Okay.
There's more observable stuff there. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's pair these next two together because
Okay.
I
like it.
personally have viewed them together for several years. Brady Singer and Chris Bubich, no longer teammates, but it just seems like they've kind of had a similar trajectory throughout where it was like, oh, there's not much to see here. And then there's been moments in the past year and a half where we've been like, oh, wait, maybe there's a lot more stuff at play here for Bubich. And then Singer kind of followed suit as well. They both had really good starts. And I think just for background, Singer, 31% rostered, Bubich, 23% rostered. But starting with Bubich, man, yeah, we saw eight Ks in 6 innings. And this was a guy before. It was TJ, right, Steve? He had Tommy John?
Yeah, he did. Like, he had that great start 2 years ago, came back and the
Yes.
bullpen was good last year. But yeah,
Because
it
when
was
we've seen moments where Bubich looked like 15 plus whiffs, which is what he did in this past outing. He introduced a sweeper last season, and so far so good. Obviously, the Royals are in a much better spot now from where they were. But interesting, he's talking about like his reliever mentality, that he actually feels like it helped him, that he's going into each inning not thinking about the entirety of the start, but literally just what's the best pitch I can throw in this moment to this batter. And yeah, in terms of the stuff, like so far he has looked really good with the sweeper has been effective, but the fastball as well got a ton of whiffs. I know that's just at like 93 miles per hour, but he's got a lot of extension with that too. High ground ball rate pitcher. Bubich at age 27 with a pretty deep arsenal. 4 pitches he throws over 10% of the time. I think Bubich, to me, holding the two side by side, I know we got to talk about Singer too, but Bubich to me is one of the more exciting pitcher ads that's out there. Singer, in his own right, to quickly talk about it, 7 innings, 8 strikeouts, scoreless in his first start. He's also a guy with great ground ball rates and extension. That was against the Rangers. Yeah, Singer, Bubich, both, very much in kind of their prime years, but we've never seen either one of them like fully break out. Although Singer did give us 179 innings last year. Talk to me about these two guys, man. I think I'm interested in both, but I think Bubich or Singer feels a little bit more like high floor, low ceiling, and Bubich seems like he could take off.
Yeah, I agree with that. Nick Pollock's kind of in on Singer. He wrote him up in his write-up today that mentioned how he's added a 4-seamer, which, Singer's had some of those great starts, and it's when the slider's cooking and the sinker's dotted low and he's playing it off each other. But now if he adds a reliable 4-seam, that could be something that could keep the hitters honest with 2 hard pitches, and then that slider that wasn't even that good in that last start, and could be better, just because Singer was, I think he was a first-round pick from Florida. He was a super high prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And we sort of, over the last few years, and they're kind of moving away from that, the Royals pitching development wasn't great. And now they've done a lot to invest in that, and you're starting to see the results with guys like Reagan's, Bubich coming through. And it's exciting. I'm excited for both. I'm more excited for Bubich, but yeah, maybe the longevity is a question, and whether Bubich can actually do this for a sustained amount of time is a big question. But I think, yeah, the short term upside for Bubich is super, super exciting. Like
Yeah.
he's got a lower slot, added more IBB, has more drop on the changeup, like got a ton of whiffs on that fastball. It looked absolutely amazing. He had 10 whiffs on the fastball, you said.
Yeah.
Elite extension. Like there's a lot to like in Chris Bubich. So I'm excited about him. Just hope he could put it together and do it for a sustained amount of time.
And worth noting that Singer has a much more of a ballpark deficit now that he's with
Yeah.
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But with Hunter Green, I mean, I don't know. I think Cincinnati's a little bit, I hate to say it, but NL Central dark horse. Yeah, I think that both of them are interesting. I think both of them are under rostered at 23 and 31%. Going down even further on the rostership at 11% rostered is Jordan Hicks. And Hicks was one that it's kind of like a little bit what we were talking about Newt Bar as well. No, it's the Cardinals tie-in, but he's one that almost feels like it's starting to get stale, where it's like, several years after he transitioned out of the pen,
We
people
went
were
through this with the
excited.
like we were waiting. When is Hicks going to be this amazing closer? When is he now? It's when is he going to be this great starter? We've been waiting for Hicks for it seems like 10 years, right?
Yeah, for real. And then, now suddenly, obviously San Francisco is a great place to pitch. They've done a great job with a variety of starters over the past 3 or 4 years. And it looks so much different this season for Hicks because he's also looking at ramping up his sinker. The velo, I guess the velo did hold at 98 and it held throughout, which is difficult. Last year that was at 94. So I guess maybe that's the question, Steve, is like, can we bank on a guy who's always been a little bit of a durability concern? And last year he had 109 innings. I don't want to say like, is his arm going to fall off, but will the velocity have to come down versus him holding 98? And is this something that we think is sustainable? I think it's fair that he's rostered below Bubich and Singer, but I think it should be a little bit closer than, like, I still think 11% is a little bit low for him. But yeah, you can't deny that the velocity was up in spring. It held throughout the 6 inning start. He's another guy who gets ground balls. So he's an interesting pitcher. What do you think on Hicks?
Everything looks great. I just don't know if he's going to be able to sustain this. Like the same thing happened last April. He started out great. He was throwing 98. It was looking good until May happened. Then the velocity went down. I think there was an IL stint, and he ended up back in the bullpen in the second half. I just don't know if this is just something that's going to happen every year, and we'll see the velocity tick down. I think until that happens, he's an ad.
Command is something we haven't talked about either.
When the velocity is there, like this is the result. It happened last April too. It's just a question of whether he can sustain it. Maybe going through that last year and having that experience and being able to know what it takes to be a starter, maybe he'll now be able to preserve himself and carry himself through the full season. But yeah, that's too low. I think it's probably a little bit low because that start did happen on Monday night, and maybe there wasn't like the ads over the weekend, like with Bubich, where that start was last week. But to be 20% less than Brady Singer, who Brady Singer shoved on Monday, right? The same night as Hicks, I think that should be closer. And I'm interested in Hicks as long as he's healthy and the velocity is up there. If not, then it's going to be trouble and like eventually back to the bullpen. But we'll see. For now, it looks good.
Are any of these guys, Singer, Bubich, and Hicks, over Jeffrey Springs for you?
No.
Okay.
Maybe
I think I might. That's where I'm at too. I think Bubich, I would be a little bit more interested just because Springs is such an anomaly. I mean, it's like
he
player
also
every
has
3
those
years.
injuries, that same sort of volume concerns too, right?
You're right. You're right.
With him, so
yeah, honestly, Singer feels like he kind of has a pretty high floor. Which
like Singer in like a fifth, like Singer's looking great in TGFBI and deeper leagues like that, like 15 team NFBC weekly leagues. Like that like if you that's a great. I wish I had any shares of him in those types of leagues. It's looking
Same,
like
man.
great back end boring starter.
I know. Well, the good news is it's only been 1 week, so while we missed on this
He might be
wave
out
on some
there.
of
I wonder
these,
what his NFBC percentage is. I could look that. I could look that
yeah,
up.
yeah, we could look that up. But there will be more of these that pop up. So we'll the
Yeah.
first few weeks of the season, we will do something of this type of waiver wire ads and prioritizing and everything. Steve, final thoughts. I know you were looking that up, but just got to hit quickly on some of the bad arms. So timely from our last episode, Roki Sasaki, that kind of fade is looking good out of the gate. I'll spare any comments or banter or what have you on the emotions from Roki. Was he going tonight, by the way, as we record this?
No, it's who's going for the Dodgers tonight?
Oh, it's
It's
Dustin May.
Dustin May. Yeah, his first start since 2023.
Right. But Sasaki has struggled. Justin Steele, who I think the industry was kind of in on. I know Nick was big on him. I don't have a ton of shares, but I liked Steele. He was right in that range of pitchers I liked. He's had a couple outings, not ideal. Aaron Nola struggling. Michael King struggling. Gavin Williams, I put on here, even though the results were good. We were so excited for spring, and the fastball just wasn't getting the whiffs. We didn't see a lot of the secondary stuff. The strikeouts were underwhelming. So just wanted to float all these names that we've talked about and see, are there any that you're totally cool with or ones that you're pretty concerned with? I think Sasaki, I'm guessing, is one that, yeah, this is what you predicted, that he's got to kind of feel it out and adjust. But yeah, curious your take on all of these as we kind of wrap up here. Steele, Sasaki, Nola, King, and Gavin Williams.
I'm not really worried about any of these guys. Steele, I think is he has these sort of starts like he needs to like work into his command. Like you see this like in his first few starts when he's come back from the IL over the last few years. Nola, I think that's just there was like a classic Nola start, like 8K, 0 walks, like 4 home runs allowed. Like
Sure.
it happens. Michael King, I'm not really worried about. The stuff looked absolutely amazing. Yeah, he didn't have the greatest command, but that's also something that he went through a bit last year. Gavin Williams was kind of disappointed there was no cutter. The extension was down a little bit. I was probably like one of my favorite breakout picks, and I'm not absolutely discouraged, but it was like, all right, maybe it's the hype could have came down a little bit. But I still think, who knows, maybe he's working and just getting comfortable, and I think there's still some upside there. Sasaki, man, I mean, that went as poorly as it could have gone, man. Like I felt bad for that guy.
Command
Like,
disaster.
he forgot to give the
Yeah.
ball back to Dave Roberts when he was taken out. Like it just looks like maybe like he may need some time adjusting, and maybe there's a phantom IL quick stint or like, to get him like a rehab start in the
Yeah,
rather than
right.
setting him down, where it's like,
Right.
oh, Dodgers demote Roki Sasaki, where it's like, okay, no, he needs to make these rehab starts after he comes back from this shoulder fatigue or whatever phantom injury that there is. Rather than actually demoting. I like, because that would be, I think, worse if they like actually demote him. Like, there was that dumb debate if he was like crying or not. Like, I don't know, who cares? Like, it's like give the guy a break. But I don't know. I still feel the same as I do about him.
Yeah,
Prior
electric
to
stuff, but
that like, and
adjustment.
eventually he's going to be amazing. Like that splitter is going to be the best pitch in the league. But
Well, the
for
good news
now,
is they're
it might
saving his
take a bit. Yeah.
bullets a little
Yeah.
bit because he's only gone 4 2/3, 9
Yeah.
walks in
Yeah.
that time. So yeah, maybe some of the durability
Yeah.
questions are, it's been an easy start to the season in terms of workload. All right, well that rounds us out, folks, for week 1 overreactions. And yeah, we'll be here every week throughout the season, not the off season, and
You're
usually
used to saying
recording.
that,
Yeah, going live on Wednesday nights and the podcast released on Thursday. So if you guys go out, give us a follow on YouTube, on Pitcher List, or on Wins Above Fantasy. If you're listening to the podcast, goes a long way if you guys give us a rating and review. We know this is a busy season, and again, those don't come in waves, so any one of them goes a long way. Appreciate that. And otherwise, yeah, you guys can follow us on X at Wins Above Pod. I'm at Van_verified. Steve is at Stav8818. On Blue Sky, Steve is at Stava8818. I'm at Van-verified, and we are Wins Above Fantasy. But yeah, that signs us out for episode 173. Happy baseball. Thanks for talking baseball with us.
Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.